has been a number of years since I began excavating the ruins of Kandar with a group of my colleagues. It is entitled Naturan de Manto, roughly translated, Book of the Dead. The book is bound in human flesh and inked in human blood. Tatra amistrobin hazarta. Tatir mando mansizon hazan sobar. Samanta rosa. Darhis hiker.
Shut it off.
Kanda.
Shut it off.
Kanda.
Shut it off!
Modern civilization and far from the groves of academe. I believe I have made a significant find.
It's starting.
Hunda Estrata Montose Kanda. That's Kandarian for Welcome to the Beyond the Film podcast. I'm
Kanda!
Tyler.
Kanda! Kanda!
Are you going to introduce yourself? Deadite?
Sorry. I mean Wingstop.
Oh.
My name's Ryan, but you knew that already.
You know, I always thought that Deadites only ate human flesh, but now we've switched to chicken flesh. Interesting.
It is a lot crispier.
Okay. So, speaking of deep fried fleshy objects, we're here to talk about evildeadburn. Easily probably Ryan's most anticipated movie of the year. A film that, you know, I was kind of looking forward to after those trailers. I'll get into my specific history with Evil Dead and how it vastly differs from someone who clearly is not a very big fan of this franchise. But Ryan, I think we should just get into this right away. If we're a visual podcast, if you're just listening to a recording of us, first off, why you ignore all our beautiful faces? But Ryan, maybe you should tell the people what your history is with the Evil Dead franchise, and what are your thoughts on evildeadburn?
I don't really like Evil Dead. I mean, as you can tell from me showing off my shirt and my tattoos and all of my toys and my Necronomicons in the background and the actual pieces of the Evil Dead 2 cabin over here that I have. No. So, I don't know what it is. I've always had a fascination with them. I saw the movie when I was pretty young with my brother, and it just clicked. So I've been obsessed with Evil Dead since I was very young. I'm actually seeing Evil Dead the musical live tomorrow, in celebration of this movie.
What the fuck was that?
Exactly, like yes,
a zombie.
It's a solid movie. I am also in the splatter zone for the musical.
Oh, I mean, if you're gonna see it, you got to be in the splatter zone.
I will try to post some pictures here because I'll be editing this after and see if I can get a picture of me splattered up. But yeah, the question is, does evildeadburn live up to the potential that it could have been? I think so. I think it's a pretty solid movie, especially if you like Rise, and the direction that the movie series has been going. I will say, and I said this leaving the theater, I don't know if you caught it, I was expecting a little bit more connection to all the movies as a franchise. They really built it up to say, like, this is going to connect all of the movies, and we're all going to... I don't really feel connected to the other movies. I actually feel a little bit more confused about the series than before this movie came out. But let me get your opinion. What do you think about evildeadburn?
Yeah, so I'm going to start with where I am on this franchise, because I am coming into this franchise at a very different place with you. I did not see Evil Dead growing up. I don't have a very strong connection to it. I'm not even the world's biggest fan of this franchise. And in fact, I would wager that you're actually the one who showed me this franchise. We spent a lot of time in your basement growing up. And I'm pretty sure Evil Dead, or I don't remember if it was Evil Dead or Evil Dead 2, is one of the movies you showed me in there. And then eventually, if you don't remember, I think like, oh God, I think we did it at Drew's house a couple years ago where we watched all of them. I think it was leading up to Evil Dead Rise. And yeah, revisiting this franchise, it's not one of my favorites. You'll notoriously remember I don't like the first Evil Dead all that much. I actually think the best film in this franchise is Evil Dead 2. And I think that there are two very distinct eras of this franchise. There's the Bruce Campbell era, and there's everything after. And frankly, I think that this franchise is much more interesting, not perfect, but interesting, when it has a acting B-movie anchor like Bruce Campbell. So even though I was more positive on that Evil Dead remake because it tries something new with diving into it being an exploration um, on addiction, Evil Dead Rise is a film I really did not like. And you know what's funny is thinking about that, Lee Cronin directed Evil Dead Rise. And if you remember back to our Lee Cronin's The Mummy discussion, you will know that I think I'm just not a very big Lee Cronin fan. So the question is Evil Dead Burn closer to what I like in the Evil Dead franchise, or is it closer to the Evil Dead Rise? We are very clearly situated in a moment where the Evil Dead franchise is, yes, maybe frustratingly unconnected, right? This franchise very much is seeking to give these own individualistic stories centered around the Kandarian demons and the Deadites and all that good stuff. And frankly, I'm not going to keep you in suspense. I like this movie better than Evil Dead Rise. I think that I'm actually very shocked to hear that you like this movie as much as you do, because I think this is the movie that's most like Evil Dead 2013 in that, despite all of the gore and the wickedness, I think what makes this movie the most interesting is its exploration of domestic violence, its exploration of generational trauma, familial abuse, centered around the fact that this is still, like, once again, another solid Evil Dead story, right? The gore hits. Some said this is the goriest film in the franchise. I didn't feel like it was. Like it definitely has some more memorable moments than something like Evil Dead Rise, but you know, the gore was there for people. I think the highlight of this movie and why it works for me more than Lee Cronin's Evil Dead Rise is Sebastian. Oh God, hold on, I'm gonna butcher his name. Sebastian Vanacek as a director. I think what he brings to this franchise is a much more frenetic pacing, mainly used by his overuse of choppy editing and frenetic close-ups. His use of the God's Eye shot multiple times is quite fascinating. The going from upside down to right side up. I don't know if there's technically a name for that. Like, I was just much more treated and much more excited by this film's direction than I was other films in this franchise. So yeah, even though it doesn't have the B movie kind of campy zaniness that the Bruce Campbell films led to this, I thought this was still a much better Evil Dead effort than Evil Dead Rise.
See, and I think we agree on Evil Dead a lot more than you realize or want to admit, because, like, I agree with you. Evil Dead 2 is probably the best film in the franchise.
Still is, by the way.
Yeah, agreed. You cannot get better than Evil Dead 2. I mean, Evil Dead 2, Army of Darkness are probably my top favorite films in this entire franchise. But I think that's what I've been trying to explain to you after all these years of 2013 Evil Dead is Evil Dead 2013 is a great horror movie, but it didn't feel like an Evil Dead movie. While this movie takes that great pacing of, like, the problem with Evil Dead 2013 is not the background story that adds to the experience. It's that it doesn't feel like it was made by Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell. It feels like a completely different entity. While this film, I actually felt like there were scenes that looked like Sam Raimi was actually still behind the camera. Like, I agree with you that this felt like it was trying to reincorporate that, like, weird shot from the 80s, the weird B movie of, like, taking risks and chances. And I just think it did it better than 2013. I do.
I agree. I think Vanacek brings a desperately needed rawness to this franchise that we haven't really seen since probably Army of Darkness, since Raimi helmed the franchise.
Yeah.
Raimi did Army of Darkness, right?
Raimi did Army of Darkness.
Okay,
He also did some of Ash vs. Evil Dead.
Okay, cool. Yeah. No, I think one of my biggest problems with Evil Dead Rise is that it just felt too polished, and that all of the like really disgusting moments felt like they were built up almost like operatically, and it just didn't feel like this sort of like rough, disgusting, jagged experience that Evil Dead always was, right? Despite me not really liking that first film, when it came out in 1981, when it came out in 1981, like horror movies themselves were very much like not mainstream as they are today. Raimi had to make the film for a couple $100,000, and despite me seeing the potential in it, and maybe it's not always being realized, like you could tell Sam Raimi was a director to watch when that movie came out. And I think Lee Cronin, despite him apparently being a massive fan of this franchise, is like, what if we basically took all of the Sam Raimi style out of Evil Dead and gave it a modern horror polish that it definitely didn't need. So yeah, I think if Evil Dead Burn is good for anything, it's that Sebastian Vanacek, I think, greatly understands this franchise way more than Lee Cronin ever will. And I think that this is definitely the most Raimi-like this franchise has been in, I mean, when did Army of Darkness come out? The early 90s? Like,
I would say since Ash vs. Evil Dead, which I know you said you haven't watched.
If
you want an actual sequel experience that feels like an actual true Evil Dead with Bruce Campbell, watch or Ash vs. Evil Dead.
Yeah, I just have so much on my backlog. And
wipe it all off. Wipe it all off.
And once again, I have mentioned that like I am not the world's biggest fan of this franchise. I think I respect this franchise more than I like it, and I think that I respect this franchise so much because you, a close friend and someone who I genuinely enjoy the opinions of, like, this franchise matters to you, and therefore it matters to me. So yeah, it's I think this film still has some problems. I think we can talk about those going forward, but like I want to like be clear that like this film is a massive step up from where Evil Dead rises. And like I don't want to spend too much time like shit talking that movie because this is not an Evil Dead Rise podcast. But yeah, I hope that me liking this movie more than that one at least pleases you a little bit.
I mean, it does. I still want to go on record saying that I liked Rise. I thought Rise was a good step in the correct direction.
I'm in the minority on Rise, which is
but
fine. Like
I also want to say that I fully agree with you that like Rise was great just because I didn't know what we could have had with what this is. But I agree with you that this movie does have its faults, and let's kind of get into that because I have some faults right off the back, and I want to know if you agree with me. And I think you're going to be surprised to hear me say this, but I think that movie was way too goddamn long.
You know what? That is one of my biggest faults too. I think it's about 20 minutes too long. The fact that an Evil Dead movie is stretched into almost 2 hours is ridiculous. Now, did it necessarily feel 2 hours at all times? No, but it also doesn't help that this movie is like really mean and cruel and just getting that just basically shoved down your face for, an hour and 30 some minutes, like once the film gets going, is almost just too much. So I don't think the film is bloated in the sense that like it's screwed with the pacing. I think it's bloated in the fact that like it's almost just too much and too cruel in too short of a time.
Yeah.
I'm glad we agree on that though.
No,
for sure.
No. Yeah, I fully agree with you that I think that it already is kind of like a hard topic for some people, and it's definitely going to be like a trigger for some people watching the movie.
Yeah, there's one scene in this movie that I'm kind of surprised they got away with. But also like I could definitely see in that scene where they definitely had to do some very careful cutting in order to get an R rating, is my guess.
I'd love to know what you're talking about.
I'm talking about the dog scene.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, like trigger warning, by the way, if you are an animal lover, this is not a movie for you.
But it made sense in that era. And I will say that I've seen... If anybody has ever watched Chaos Walking, there's some worse dog scenes. Chaos Walking has about like a 3-minute scene of the main character... Or the main character watching a dog be drowned.
You are literally the only person who still thinks about Chaos Walking.
It was my first date with my
wife. I know,
wife.
and that's the only reason why. Yeah, no. Yeah, the movie's a bit too long. Yeah, the cruelness aspect is kind of insane. For how much I like that cold open, I'm like, it feels so separate from the rest of the movie. Like,
I fully agree with you. I actually felt more confused with the time jumps. Like, I didn't know what was a time jump and what wasn't a time jump at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
And it didn't help with what was going on in our theater.
Yeah, like, I actually think that even though parts of that cold open were cool, you could have cut all of it out and just had the opening be her walking onto the highway.
Correct.
And that gets to, like, this movie's bloatedness. Another thing was, did you think that when the dad became possessed... Okay. Do you want to do spoilers at this point if we're talking about issues?
Yeah, we're going to go full spoiler at this point on. So if you haven't seen it yet, you're a huge Evil Dead fan. You just come back after you've seen it.
So I think my biggest issue with, like, one of the cuts in this movie is when the dad becomes possessed at the funeral home, they almost play it off with such a dramatic cut like it was a dream. Did you get that too?
No. Okay. Like, the way that I took it was that he just got up and walked away, because we know it wasn't a dream, because she had said towards the end of the movie, like in the after credits, she's like, we need a new whatever person.
Well, yeah, and the fact that, he comes back and is kind of like the end villain of the movie, plays to the point that it isn't a dream. It just felt kind of weird that, like, he wasn't in the movie more. But
well, I think going, since we're in full territory, I do think that obviously evildeadburn is a double entendre. I mean, yes, it's fire. There's a representation of fire, but also, like, being burned by somebody or, like, burning your family kind of thing. Like, I think it's like a huge double entendre for, like, a lot of things. I don't really have a better way of saying it.
No,
but and I think that falls onto him on, like, he was the main villain for her, obviously.
Yeah.
As somebody who was being abused. So, like,
100%.
I think that's what was trying to be represented by the director by doing that.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that, hey, the movie's evil, there's some dead in there, and we actually got some burning, is a lot better than the fact that Evil Dead Rise barely used its, like, cityscape to its own benefit, which was one of my other problems with that movie. But, yeah, I mean, like, there's good stuff in here. Now, I think one of the biggest issues with these newer Evil Dead movies is the fact that you don't have that magnetic character presence in Bruce Campbell. Did you think any of the characters were really good? Or do you think they were just kind of vessels for the demons themselves? Because I tend to lean towards the latter here.
Yeah, no, honestly, like, so it's a fact for Evil Dead movies that you are not supposed to like the characters in the movie. They're supposed to be vessels. Even Bruce Campbell originally was, like, the way Bruce Campbell plays Ash, he played him in a way that, like, nobody's gonna like this guy. He's not supposed to be likable, but he always does what he needs to do, and, like, that is why people resonate with him so much. No, I didn't care for a single person in this movie. I barely remembered anybody. Even, like, the main heroine's name, I couldn't tell you her name right now.
Yeah, so that was my other thing. So Yeah, I forgot her name as well. Alice, I think it is actually.
Yeah.
Alice. She's played by someone named Suhila Yakub. I thought that she was much better as a final girl, a quote unquote final girl, than oh god, who was it Lily Sullivan?
You
I
talking
think
about it
Lily Sullivan was in Evil
in
Dead.
Rise?
Like, yeah, I thought that she, maybe captured that Bruce Campbell spirit a little bit more. Uh, maybe some of the stuff is a little too on the nose, right? There's the wink, wink, nudge, nudge at the chainsaw, but then the chainsaw actually becomes like a giant weed whacker with like a saw blade on it for some ungodly reason.
It was an
it's
edger.
What?
It's called an edger. It's to edge your grass.
Whatever. Um. Yeah, I mean.
See, but I'd also say that like that was one of my positives for this. Is this was the first modern Evil Dead movie that we got that actually felt like it had comedy to it.
Oh, see, that's my other big issue. Like, I didn't like. I saw the moments that were supposed to be funny, right? Like, there's a couple jokes about this old lady and like those. What are those things called that like take old people up and down stairs?
Oh yeah, the auto chair climber.
Yeah,
or
right. Like there's a couple jokes surrounding that I'm like, okay, like I see where they're trying to do comedy here, and they did that in Evil Dead Rise too, and it all just fell flat for me. Like there is no campy zaniness in these movies, and if that's what you like, cool. But God, I wish that these were much more horror comedies than just outright horror gross fests. Yeah. Like, I think that's what people like about the Evil Dead franchise. And, maybe just shoehorning in a couple weird comedy scenes just to say that we're trying horror comedy isn't really the same as, having something deeply injected into your veins like those first couple films were.
I think that if we really want to continue the Evil Dead series, I think we've done the Bruce Campbell trilogy now. We've done the sequel trilogy, if you want to call it, whatever, like the gross out, the disgusting, low humor. I think that we need to find a replacement for Bruce Campbell. And I don't think that we're going to do that by continuing to like make it like an anthology series. I think that we need to just kind of buckle down. I don't, as a huge fan, I don't know how I feel about that, but I do think that is one of the only ways for this franchise to really thrive again.
Well, that's the problem. It's like you say find a new Bruce Campbell, but like any attempt they're gonna have to make that is just gonna come off as forced, right? Like,
well, see, it's hard because you haven't watched Ash vs. Evil Dead, but like they do set up like some really interesting ideas for what could have been a replacement for Bruce Campbell. And it's unfortunate that series got cut by Starz because like they had a really good setup for continuing some kind of legacy for it.
Sure. And I'm glad that fans at least were able to get something like that. But like, yeah, I think unfortunately we're never going to get that as you described it. Like, I think the future of the Evil Dead franchise is unfortunately just more of what we're currently getting.
Well,
we're going to get,
stay back because supposedly we are still getting an animated series starring Ash, voiced by Bruce Campbell.
Sure. Fine. I mean, but once again, Bruce Campbell's got to be getting up there in age. Like, he's not going to be around forever.
Well, no, he's not. He's stepping away from the Evil Dead. Are you aware that he's sick?
Dude, I just show up to the movies and...
Okay. For anybody out there that does not know that
oh, wait, you know what? I think I did hear this, yeah.
He does have an incurable cancer, and he's stepping away. He does not want to physically play Ash anymore. And by all means, like, the man's sick. He needs to rest.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be the fan that's like, get him out here and make him do the dance.
Drag his corpse out to read some lines for an animated franchise.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, no, is this film gonna like change anyone's mind on the franchise?
Absolutely
I don't think
not.
so. I think that if you're if you're a fan of the Evil Dead franchise, you're going to come in and you're going to get some Evil Deadness. You're not, unfortunately, going to get that 1 through 3 Evil Dead here. You're getting much more of the remake to Rise kind of Evil Dead. And if you vibe with that, cool. If not, I mean, I think there's more here to like than in Rise. So yeah, by all means, like I think this movie's still worth watching here. Anything else on your favorite franchise here?
Yeah, I just want to say that, like, adding on to what you said about fans of the series will like it. Like, there is a lot here still that connects to the other movies. We see connections to Rise very heavily, especially in the beginning. The whole movie, the house that it takes place in, is actually Lucy Lawless's character in Ash vs. Evil Dead, Ruby. And it is the exact same house from Evil Dead, and it is the exact same set piece. And the director specifically chose that on purpose to have that done. And even, like, we see with the Kandarian dagger later on in the movie that looks like that specifically because of events from Ash vs. Evil Dead. So it is very interesting to see a director try to find a way to continue that while not continuing it as kind of like a side spin-off. I don't know. I guess we'll see what happens in 2 years when we get Evil Dead Wrath, which is
that what it's called?
It is called Evil Dead Wrath, and it is confirmed to be a prequel that will be set in like 1971.
You know what? At this point, I think a prequel would do this franchise well, right? You know, I'm not saying that a prequel's automatically going to be good, but I think that, you know, the lore has felt so disconnected for a while that I think kind of wrapping some of that lore together. Like, I know, like, if I remember correctly from Army of Darkness, there were like 3 Necronomicons that were like transported out of that era. And I think they said one of those Necronomicons is the one they found at Evil Dead Rise. But then, like, you know, they did a little, yeah.
Sorry, right? So the 3 Necronomicons, you have the Bruce Campbell Necronomicon, the main one that everybody knows. You have the one from 2013, Evil Dead is the second one, and you have the one from Evil Dead Rise, which is the 3rd Necronomicon, and they were all separated in some way, shape, or form.
Right, but like this one, like there's like an attempt at lore with what is supposedly Bruce Campbell, right, in the beginning, but like, you know, is he just hunting down one of those already existing Necronomicons? Like, what's the whole deal with this supposed cult? Like,
so sorry, I'll kind of fill you in on that.
Okay.
So basically, it's been hidden throughout the entire movies that Bruce Campbell, Ash Williams, has been lost in time pretty much this entire time, ever since Army of Darkness. Not positive how that works in with Ash versus Evil Dead, but that like the events of Evil Dead are continuously looping throughout each other. In every movie, the like little nods that Bruce Campbell's putting in is supposed to hint as to where Ash is in time right now. So you have like his voice recording in Rise. That's supposed to say that he's with these priests at this point doing that. You have his pictures within the Men of the Circle or whatever this was, that he's working with this kind of like cult at this point to try to stop the Necronomicon, that he's like continuously moving throughout time.
God, you know what that's giving to me? Is one of my biggest issues with the Terrifier franchise, where every new movie that comes out, Damien Leone is dangling all this like lore around us, and I say, the next one, I promise it's going to explain everything, and then it doesn't.
We will never get an explanation.
And it's like, I promise the next one. I promise the dragons are coming. Right?
Because
like,
I'm going to tell you the secret as a huge Evil Dead fan, and I'm going to speak some blasphemy right now, all right? There is no plan. They just say what happens after the movies come out, and they go, "Yeah, meant to do that. We meant to do that."
Yeah, dude. I know. I know.
I'm sorry to tell you that Santa Claus isn't real, dude.
Yeah,
but like,
I hate to break it to you, dude. Sam Raimi didn't sit down in a room in 1987 after Evil Dead 2 and come up with the plans for all these movies like 30-some years in the future.
We're at 30 minutes, and I'm not going to listen to this blasphemy anymore. Sam Raimi's a genius. Ted Raimi's pretty smart. Bruce Campbell's also awesome. I'm out of here. Do you have any closing facts, or are you just excited for the next one?
I am. slightly more excited for the next one than I thought I would be based on how decent this one was. But before we leave, Ryan, when should people go and see Evil Dead Burn?
Go and see it ASAP because I'm afraid that it's going to bomb at the box office because there were only a few people in our theater. See it on whatever screen you can.
Yeah, I mean, I think you got to be an Evil Dead fan to like really go in and like really get something out of this movie. I don't think it's a movie you could just kind of walk in and just knowing nothing and just kind of get full enjoyment out of it. I think it's, dollar theater, $5 Tuesday, maybe even like a PVOD rental. Like it's better than Rise, but like I don't think it's worth like a Thursday night showing like we went to. So, what did you think of Evil Dead Burn? Please leave a comment telling us who was right, who was wrong, and why in the comments down below. We haven't been getting a lot of comments lately, and I would love to get more.
Spam our comments with groovy, please.
Yeah.
Just
that would be pretty groovy.
That would be pretty groovy.
Excellent. Excellent. Any closing words for the people, Ryan?
Shall I read a few lines from one of Bruce Campbell's many, many biographies? We've got Make
He
Love
has
the Bruce
many
Campbell
biographies?
Way. He's got at least 3. We've got Make Love the Bruce Campbell Way. We've got Hail to the Chin, Part 1. We've got Hail to the Chin, Part 2.
Never heard of those in my life, but hey, check them out. Sure, you can get them on Amazon, but don't support Amazon.
You can actually get the audiobook read by Bruce Campbell himself.
Makes
See
sense.
you guys next week.
All right.
Naturon Demanto, roughly translated, Book of the Dead. The book is bound in human flesh and inked in human blood. Fofra amisopin, hazarda, kandu, mando, mansis, on pasam sobar. Samampros, does, haikal, dan fosa, kinda!